Hi moms, let's talk about what it might look like to do school for a day using Sonlight. And I'm going to show you what I do. We are doing level H this year in my homeschool with my 7th grade daughter. So doing school with one child looks quite a bit different than it did when I had to school with multiple children. But this is just to give you an idea of what a day might look like with one child at least, and then if you have more than one child, you would just add the two together maybe, or be doing two different levels. At one time, I was doing level H with an 8th grade daughter and a 6th grade son. Based on your situation, that's what you would do. But for my situation, I'm doing this with a 7th grade daughter, and I'm going to take you back to week 1 of our school year and show you exactly what we do. So I'm going to reverse the screen a little bit and show you exactly how I do this, okay? So here we are with week 1, as you can see, week 1, level H. I did not do the Bible portion of this level because my daughter has things that she does for youth group, for her own personal devotions, and then because I have other children in my home right now, we do some different readings from other Sonlight books or other resources that I get my hands on, and we usually do that during breakfast. And she's also memorizing already for church, and she used to be in Awana, so that took care of scripture memorization for us. I love owning these books because I can use them at other times, but that's not what we did. So here's our first day of school. We're reading History of the World, Story of the World, Early Modern Times. And so here's my stack of books that I'm going to use. And I'm only going to show you history and math for now. But this is what we do. So I'm supposed to read, as you can see, the intro and chapter 1 to the Holy Roman Empire. So I just grab my book and I go straight to that part. And here it is. Here's chapter 1. Here's the intro. So I read the introduction to her, and we would do history often. So I would do breakfast, and then in my schedule, I did breakfast, then I would do science. She likes to take care of science even sitting at the table, and history sitting at the table. So that's what we generally did. Or sometimes we would sit on the couch. So here's chapter 1. So this would be our first day of school. There, we're done. We're done with the history reading. Later in the day, at lunch, typically, I would read to her the next thing. So the next thing on the agenda for my first day of school is this: A Murder for Her Majesty, chapter 1. That's a read aloud. So I'm going to read that book aloud to her during lunch. And so here it is, just as an example. So here's the first book. Here's chapter 1. Okay, and that's about the size of the print. And let me flip through here. It's a pretty short chapter. Here it is, 1, 2. There's my spread, done. That took me 10 to 15 minutes to read, but it was during lunch, not a big deal. And if I'm remembering correctly, she loved it, and we probably read more than one chapter at lunch. My older son would also be there at the same time listening in. So, and as you can see, I put a little tiny check mark in the bottom of the corner because I got into that habit when I had multiple children, so that when I would use it in the coming years, I wouldn't have to mark all over the place. So I put a little check mark in the bottom right-hand corner, and I might even write. So my oldest daughter was Stephanie, so I'd write Stephanie up here and the date that she used it as far as what week it was, and then I would put a little check mark in the top corner. And then for my next child, I would put it down here and the next here. But I refreshed this IG because you can repurchase them for half off, so I refreshed it when it came time for me to have Julia. We also did the lap book, and you can see we did both of those assignments. And so I would do that at some point during the week, not the first day. Maybe we did the cover the first day, and then we did this the next time. Okay, so now we've done, for our school day so far, we did Bible, we did history, checked it off. I read to her during lunch, done. And she reads to herself, typically sometime in the afternoon, The King's Fifth. So that's this book. So I have this book handy, and she goes and reads that. And typically the readings are about 20 pages. So I'm going to see The King's Fifth, that's chapter 3. She only had to read intro in chapter 1. So here we are, and that's page 16. So as you can see, approximately 20 pages of reading for that first day. So that was that, and then we checked that off here. Okay, next is there's always, sorry, I hope you're not getting dizzy as I'm flipping this around so much. There is always a poetry selection. We just read poetry to enjoy it. I didn't do serious heavy-duty analysis. In this year, I love it because there's a short biography about each poet. So here's this one, Classic Poetry. It's All the World's a Stage, 12 and 13. So as you can guess, that means we're going to learn a little bit about Shakespeare. I love this book too. It has a timeline of all the poets you're going to talk about. So the very first one is Shakespeare. So there he is. And of course, this is right in line with what we're learning about in history because we're about that time period in history. So here we are, and here's a little blurb about William Shakespeare, and then here's All the World's a Stage. And then later in the week, on Thursday or Friday, whichever you want it to be, you've got this one. New poet. Oh, not a new poet, sorry, forgot. It's also Shakespeare. So I have a feeling that I might have read all of Shakespeare's, all the selections from Shakespeare in one day. And I might have done that the second week. See over here? So the second week. And then I just go back and mark them off, those 3. So you can really do that however you want. You don't have to read this on the second day. You don't have to read this on the 4th day. I typically do all the reading on one day of the week for poetry, or every 3 weeks I'll do the reading, depending. Okay, let me pause there. Okay, so I hope that's a little helpful just to see those days going by. The other part is that as you're doing this, on the sheet, there were little globes, and that's something in this Markable Map. So we can stop and find whatever it is that we're doing in that. So for instance, there's a map point I'm trying to see after that first day, Story of the World. There's lots more notes under the first week, but here we go. So here's timeline and map points. So right here, there were map points, and it says Pacific Ocean, blah, blah, blah. So you can find all of those on the map. But then here it says, okay, let's find Europe and Italy. E4, F4, map 1. No problem. My maps are numbered on here. So I'm going to come to map 1. See where it says it? Here we go. Map 1. I'm going to go to map 1. Oh, how about I turn it the right way? Sorry, guys. Map 1. E4, F4. So it's marked just like a normal map. Then you find it. There's Italy. There's Europe. So you can do that, or you can use one of the big markable maps that Sonlight offers, or just any map you want, really. And that way your child is in real time. Hey, we just read about Italy. Can you find Italy on that map? Good job. Woo! All right, the other part I would show you, so in my school day, we do science and history right now. This isn't always how it is, but for my school day this year, we do science and history first. And then we move into, I let my daughter stretch, maybe she goes and actually gets dressed for the day at that point, and then we do math. And this year I'm doing pre-algebra with Math UC, and so I'm going to show you right where we are at this moment. She just finished lesson 22, and actually she's up there right now taking a test while I'm doing this. Yay! So lesson 22, so all we're going to do is, tomorrow, we're going to watch the Math UC DVD for lesson 23. Steve Demme explains it all. Then I'm going to look through this with her. As a matter of fact, when he does problems on his whiteboard, I pause it and do it and we do them on the whiteboard our own selves before he does it, see if we get it right. Since she is my last child at home, I sit and watch the DVD with her for my own self. It's only about 10 minutes, and I can slide that into my day. So I sit and watch that with her. I don't sit there with her while she's doing her worksheets or anything, but that initial day when we watch the lesson, I sit with her. It helps refresh my mind about pre-algebra too. Pre-algebra also. She'll look at this, and then here's the workbook. So here's 23A. So it goes 23A, B, C, D, E, F. So she will do this worksheet, 23A. I will correct it at some point during the day. The ones she doesn't get right, I will make her redo, see if she understands what she did, and make her redo them. If she does the entire sheet perfectly, I might skip B and C and jump straight to D, the systematic review. I have a feeling with this lesson we will not be skipping B and C. So she'll do A tomorrow. The next day she'll do B. The next day she'll do C. And again, I will correct it that day so she gets feedback. I might not correct it as soon as math is done, but I will correct it during the day and have her redo sometime in the early afternoon before she's checked out. So we're taking a test about every 7 days, 7 school days, about every 7 or 8 school days. Once in a while, it's sooner than that. That is, I hope, a helpful example of what we do.
Hello, my name is Anne, and I've been using Sonlight since 2007, and I'm going to show you today a day in the life of History Bible Literature Level 300, which is 20th century world history and 20th century world literature. So I'm going to flip my camera around and show you what I've got. So when you reach high school, you end up with 2 big giant binders with IGs, instructor guides for the year. And the reason there are 2 is because you've got a parent guide and a student guide, and they are equivalent with all of the scheduling and all the notes and everything, but the difference is that the parent guide has the answers to the questions, whereas the student guide doesn't. So I use these big giant binders simply for storage. I do not carry them around all day long or anything like that. So what I do is my daughter and I, we each have a smaller binder. This one's mine. It's got the name of our school, and this is hers. And she does like to have a checklist kind of thing. And so at the beginning of the week, I make her a little spreadsheet, and she marks off what she does on it. But behind the history tab, we've got the 1 week that she's currently working on. And the same with mine. So what you have in one day for, let's do day 156 here. We've got a reading and the book for the Bible reading right there. And we've also got the Bible reading itself and a memory verse to memorize. And then you've got the history book. So Modern History and Pictures is the new-ish. It's been out for, well, actually, this might be the first year. The Modern History and Pictures. And so you can see that you're reading 1 page spread in it. And then you've got these 2 symbols here. And those signify that there is something to do with a map and something to do with a timeline book. Now, the timeline book in the younger levels of Sonlight comes with stickers that you place, and in the high school levels, they do not. But since we did start Sonlight back in 2007, our book is filled with stickers, and it turns out we already had a sticker placed for that. So when you get there, you can go back and look at 1989, and there you go. We had learned about that earlier in our Sonlight journey, and then, of course, into more detail here in high school. So that's what the timeline book is all about. And then the mapping will show you, let me go down. So you see that this is day 156, and you've got a mapping activity. So you hop down here, and you find the symbol that matches there. And on map 10, you're going to look for that location in China. And let me trade books here. I'm going to hop over to mine. And you can see that in the teacher guide, it tells you that you're going to look at point number 39 on map 10. So I'm going to grab that here. And if you can see it, we've got point 39 right there. And this is the map that's in the teacher's instructor's guide, the parent one. The student one is blank, and so it is there if you want the student to mark it in theirs. We actually just look at the teacher one that is already labeled, so you can do what you choose with that. So those are two resources that you've got to go along with your history studies. And notice that there are discussion questions, and here I can point out that the parent guide has the answers, whereas the student guide doesn't. And the way I do it is at the beginning of the week, I look at the week's worth of reading and I pick which questions I want her to answer. And so she does that independently and writes her answers in a notebook. And then I will go through, grab that notebook off her shelf once a week and go through it and see what her answers were. And if there's anything that we need to discuss further, then we can do that. So high school is really designed for them to be doing it as independently as you want them to, because they've got the schedule and they've got the questions and all the tools that they need. In addition to the spine, which I want to give you guys a look at that. So we're on 272 to 273 on this particular day. And I'll show you this book while I'm flipping through it. It really is an amazing book filled with pictures that really brings all the history to life. And so here is the passage that they will read on this particular school day and answer the questions. And in addition to the history spine, you will have a piece of historical fiction to go along with it. And so this week she is still in the middle of Blackbird Girls, which is about two girls during the time of the Chernobyl accident, which is something that is here in the history book that she read too. So bringing the historical fiction in really brings the time period to life. It makes it memorable. And it is just we've just loved it, learning that way all through our Sonlight years. So that is the history. Then we've got literature, and I grabbed a couple of literature books here. And I pulled one that is actually not the week that we're on, but it's just an amazing example of how neat it is that the 20th century world literature can correspond with the history that you're doing. And this was one of our favorite literature books that we read this year, Parallel Journeys. And we read it at the same time that we're reading The Hiding Place in history. So it really brings so much more than just reading a paragraph, about this time period in a textbook. It really is amazing. So in the literature, you're going to have your same guide with what you're reading for the week, and poetry is included. So here's one of the poetry books that you read all throughout this level. And the creative expression assignments are the writing assignments that go along with what you're reading. So those are all scheduled in the parent guide and the student guide, so that it's just so easy to be your child's mentor as they get up into high school. And it really is a really neat thing to experience. So a day in the life of HBL 300. You see these giant instructor's guides at the beginning of the year and you think, oh my goodness, how in the world can I get through all this? Well, it's just one week at a time, one day at a time. And so if you look at the table here, so, you've got a history book, you've got some historical fiction, some poetry, and a literature book that you're reading that week. And when you put all that into perspective, it really is very manageable. And the combination of all those things just makes for a memorable time of learning history and literature that goes along with it.
Hi, this is Jonna Lawrence, and I recently met up with Claire Lewis, and I spent the day with them as they did school. Meet Matthew and Claire Lewis and their 6 children, ages 11 to 1. Claire is doing school with 4 of the children using packages E and B. Join me as we get to be a fly on the wall while the Lewises do school for a day. As we join them, you will notice the youngest of the 4 is doing school watching her Mr. Demi video. Claire is getting the boys started at the table. You will notice they have stacks of all their work to do, their table work, or table time as we like to call it. And she's just checking through, making sure they have where they're supposed to be. There she is. She's still working on her math video. Isn't that fun? She enjoys watching Mr. Demi. Claire was pointing out to me she writes in her notebook just a simple schedule for the boys to stay independently motivated, and they can check off on that notebook as they work. The youngest you'll see, he's in a Spider-Man shirt, and he is just part of the crowd. He's 4 years old, and he is not officially doing school at this time, but he is ready for when any sibling is ready to play with him. So they all interact and they play. They rotate among the DVD player so they can watch Mr. Demi. You can see Claire is working on reading assignments and math assignments, and she just stays motivated and walking between all the children as they need help. So the youngest is working on her blocks with her manipulatives for Matthew C, learning how to create 3-digit numbers and what it would look like with the manipulatives. You will notice one's taking a test, one's working on handwriting, another is working on his math for the day, while their youngest is just part of the crowd. He's part of the school. He's eating crackers, but he's not going away. He's just hanging out with them as they're all doing what they're going to do. You will even notice at times they get into the music. They can hear Mr. Demi's music on whoever's on the couch. And there she is. She's all excited about her blocks. She knew she was being videoed, so she wanted me to see them. There's Claire working on some constructive criticism or constructive corrections, so math could be redone. I love watching the youngest one as he just made a mess, but that's okay. That's just part of how they go about their day. But Claire just walks around and moves in between all the children, and she just stays keeping them motivated. You'll see the second oldest, he has his book there ready to start his reading time when he's done. I noticed that often the boys would help each other when one had a question. If mom was busy, the other one would often just lean over and give help. About 10:30, they were done, and the youngest one was awake. So Claire spent some time cuddling her as she wakes up, going through some handwriting with the youngest in school. Then she works on some of the phonics and mechanics practice with one of the younger boys. And at this time, the baby and Zachariah, they work and they play together around mom. But they're able to just play while she works on whatever they're practicing on. But I believe they were working on some writing and reading. And now she's working with the 2 youngest that are in school, reading their time traveler book. And they're answering questions. If you were to listen to them, she would ask, do you remember who Marco was? And, oh yes, he's the little boy. Do you remember what a slave is? And they discuss this. But as they're playing with blocks and the 2 youngest ones are there, she's asking the questions, and they are very much involved in the answering of the questions, but they're also playing. And it's something we say often is that our kids can be playing and they can be answering. They are so able to multitask that it's easy for them. Watch that little one as she has a Matthew C block. She thinks she's hot stuff there. But again, Claire is engaged with the kids. They're all having fun. They're not leaving the room. The oldest one at this time, he was done. He was walking the dogs, I believe, and maybe took a couple laps around the front yard on his bike. But he had finished his table time and was able to go spend some time away from the siblings. Now, Claire has them listening to their read aloud, and now she's asking them questions. They've moved to the island or the bar, asking questions about their read aloud from their history. And they are very close to these two being done for the day. They've done all their seat work, they've done their Bible time, they've done their history. Claire is not doing science on this day. She says she often meets with a friend who is also doing the same science, and they do it together once a week. So they have lunch, and then about after lunch, the older ones get to come and they will read their books. Notice they're doing, one's reading his reader, the other one's looking at his language arts. They're still gathering up supplies. They're also doing chores. You'll notice they'll walk through, some are doing sweeping chores and different things, but this is kind of everyone's getting to the finish of their day or the seat work. Claire's pulled him over for a little bit of time one-on-one where they could do some reading, and now she's gone to work on their history, level E. So now she is reading through, they're talking about World War II, Japan, Great Depression's coming up. They talked about the rationing of rubber and how we as Americans were rationing and what that looked like. You'll notice she uses a flex binder to keep just a few weeks of their schedule. So now they've cleaned up and they've had some break time, and she's ready to get going. She has the flex binder, she has all her questions there. You can see the baby just right at her feet. And the other two are engaged in the conversation as she's reading through their history with them. Again, this is a great time. They can do multiple things, but they are talking about history and as a family. I loved how she let them look through the books while she read out of the other book, so that he was keeping his brain on what was going on, but he could ask a question. He was asking questions about what she was talking about. The younger ones were very imaginative. They would come in, but to be honest, they were listening as well, and playing as they came in and out, but they were having the freedom to do what they were doing, which was playtime with one another. So after she finished all her read aloud time, she then gave dictation for the oldest one with his language arts. And he finished up some of his table time. And as you can see, the second oldest worked on his reading. And they were done with school at this time.